In this lesson, we're going to look at sketching straight lines. Before we do that, there's a couple of features you need to show on a sketch. You should show the axes X and Y. I also like to show 0 at the origin, and at least 2 key coordinates that are on the line. You should also label the line with its rule. Let's have a look at some examples. We're going to sketch y equals -2 and x equals 3. These are special lines. And so you might remember this line means everywhere on the line y stays -2, so that's going to be a horizontal line. So we sketch our axes, put our line in at y equals -2, a horizontal line. There's a key point on that line. In this case we don't need 2 key points because it's horizontal, and label it with a rule. Let's have a look at this line. Everywhere in this line x equals 3, so that's a vertical line. There's our vertical line through x equals 3, and label it with its rule. Let's look at some oblique lines now. Initially, we're going to look at lines that have been rearranged into the slope-intercept form, where y is by itself. So if we compare this to y equals a plus bx, we can see that we know what one point on this straight line will be straight away. So we'll sketch the axes. We can see the slope of this line is -3. Now we want to write the slope as a fraction because we want to know the horizontal distance, which is the bottom number, compared to the vertical distance, the top number. And this slope is negative, so it's going to go down like this. So I'm going to draw my gradient triangle, and it's going to go across 1 and down 3. And that will give me a second point that I know. And because I know where I started from, I can figure out the coordinates of this point, so we'll do that now. I started at x equals 0 and went across 1, so now I'm at x equals 1. So that's the second point on this line. Now I've got my 2 dots, put my straight line in, there it is, and I should label it with its rule. And that gives me the sketch of that line. Here's another one, y equals 4x. So I'm going to compare the general form above. This time the x term comes first, so bx plus a, and there's nothing here with a, so a is actually 0. So the y-intercept of this graph goes through the origin, 0, 0. So we'll sketch the graph in. And that's our first point on the line. Now the gradient of this graph is 4. And we want to write that like a fraction because I want to draw a right-angled triangle from my known point, 0, 0. This time the gradient is positive, so it goes up to the right. So I'm going to go across 1 and up 4. And that gives me a second point on my line. Put a dot there. And because I know where I started, I can figure out the coordinates of where I've ended up. I started at x equals 0 and went across 1, so I'm at x equals 1. I started at y equals 0 and went up 4, so now I'm at y equals 4. All there is to do is to sketch that straight line in. That's crooked. And label it with its rule. Our next line, compare it to the general form. We'll put the x first and then the constant term, and so we can see our y-intercept is 15. So we draw our axes and we'll put our 15 about there. Now our gradient here is positive, and so therefore it's going to go across 2 and up 3 to find our second point. We'll go across 2 and up 3 to get our second point on our straight line. Because we know where we started from, we can figure out where we ended up. So we started x equals 0, went across 2, we're at x equals 2. We started here at y equals 15 and went up 3. We're now at 15 plus 3, or 18. So that's our sketch of our straight line. Got a bit wonky here. And label it with its rule. Here's our next line. So again, comparing it to the slope-intercept form. This time the number by itself is first a plus bx. So the y-intercept is at 0.3. And some people think, oh, there's nothing in front of x, but don't forget there's actually a 1 there. So the slope here is positive 1. I'm going to write it like a fraction. And we'll put our known point, which is at the y-axis at 0.3. Let's put it about there. And it's going to go up because it's positive gradient, so it's going to go up that way. So we'll label our y-intercept. And let's draw our gradient triangle. So we're going to go across 1 and up 1. And gives us our second point. Now once again we know where we are, so we started at x equals 0, went across 1, we're now at x equals 1. We started at y equals 0.3 and we went up 1, so now we're at y equals 1.3. And so now let's sketch our straight line in. And there it is. And label it with its rule, y equals 0.3 plus x. Here's another straight line. It's got y by itself, so we compare it to the slope-intercept form. The constant is first, so that's our y-intercept a plus bx. So our y-intercept is at 2.3 and we have a negative slope. So our slope this time is written as a decimal. Now the easiest thing to do here is to change this decimal to a fraction. So it's the first decimal place, so it's 4/10. And you'll notice, of course, that 2 goes into top and bottom, 2 goes into 4 twice, and into 10 5 times. So that's the gradient. And we put a point that we know, which is the y-intercept. Now let's draw our gradient triangle. Remember, it's going down to the right. We decide that first, and we're going to go across 5. Now you could have left it as 10. You can go across 10, but we've simplified. So you could have left it as 4 and 10. You still get the same line. You just have a different point label, but all these points lie on the same straight line. So we're going to go across 5, and we're going to go down 2. Now we're at 2.3, so when we go down 2, we're not going to cross the x-axis, are we? So you should keep things relatively to scale, roughly. It's not a graph, it's a sketch. So that's our second point. So we're going to label that second point. And we started at x equals 0, went across 5 units, so we're at x equal 5. We started at y equals 2.3 and went down 2, so we're at 0.3.